welcome everyone to the FS Podcast. I'm Dylan Roberts, and today I have one of my good friends, Simon. Simon, how are you doing?
Good. How are you, Dylan?
I'm good. How do you pronounce your last name? I always say Groneberg, but I don't never know if that's the right way. And I've known you for like
It's definitely not. No, in German you would say Groneberg, Crown Mountain.
Yeah, there's no way I can do that. Well, where are you right now? Tell us a little bit about where you are and what's currently going around you right now.
Yeah, I'm sitting in my home office in Berlin. The background is unfortunately not my real office. Um, we are currently self-isolating slash quarantining ourselves to make sure that we don't get Kung flu. And it's been a long month for us, or month and a half by now. And Germany just decided to keep these distancing measures up until the end of August, which is just in right now. So we will have quite a lot of Lord of the Rings marathons ahead of us until this is over for sure.
Yeah, I know. Once you're done with Lord of the Rings marathon, I don't know, what you go into Star Wars, I guess.
The old ones, yes. The prequels, yes, because they're still better than
The
what
new
we
ones.
have recently. I think, yeah, I don't want to talk about the recent Star Wars movies. It really ruins my mood.
No, I agree. Yeah, I don't know. It felt like too many people were putting their hands into the movie, and
Yeah.
you could just tell. But yeah, so I know you started a new podcast. Can you tell me a little
Yep.
bit about that and how's that been going?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started this project inspired by you and some other friends, which is called Stayin at Home. And basically, I talk with people that I think it's interesting to have a conversation with about not only staying at home and how we manage that, but also how, people that do jobs that are basically traveling constantly, how their life is impacted, or also how pre-corona era their life has looked like. So it's the whole intent is basically to have an hour-long vacation from breaking news and all of that, and just talk majorly about positive things and give a little motivation boost for everyone having to do so much home office lately.
No, that's great. What are some examples that you've had on your podcast?
In my most recent episode, which is episode number 3, Evo, because the first recording got lost and I had to do it again. And fortunately, my guest was so kind to give me another hour of his time. I spoke to the Porsche brand ambassador, Timo Bernhard, who not only has won the 24 Hours of Le Mans 3 times, but also has broken the Nürburgring record, the unbreakable 35 years old Nürburgring record, which I'm absolutely obsessed with cars and motorsports. It's has barely anything to do with NASCAR and all of that stuff, which is the popular stuff, especially where you live. But it's really high-end sports. Some of these cars are more advanced than Formula One. Just to give you an example, the car that Timo was driving when he won Le Mans and the World Championships also broke the world record on the Nordschleife. It's like 1,600 pounds to 1,200 horsepower. So, and a 4-cylinder engine with a battery in it. So,
Dang.
he like, there's this absolutely crazy video of this track record, which looks like you're watching a fast forward video clip, and he does like 370 kilometers per hour. That's like 400 bald eagles per cheeseburger. I don't know what that translates into in American units, but yeah, dude is absolutely amazing. And we spoke about one of his highest highs in his career and the lowest lows when he had an absolute devastating accident, and what this has done, the PTSD has done with his mental capability, and how this turned out to be something positive for him. Was really, really interesting, and shameless self-plug here if we gonna put this one in the show notes. But yeah, it was quite fun, and I get to talk to people that I'm a super fan of, and it's basically an hour-long conversation, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, podcasts really make sense for you just because you are just connected in a lot of ways, and once things cool down with the virus, you should definitely keep going. I think there's definitely a need for more quality content, not just Tiger King, which everyone is just going crazy about. And I didn't like the bonus episode that they did. I thought it kind of...
I haven't seen it yet.
They kind of just lessened the documentary, in my opinion. It's nothing crazy more than I learned. But yeah, it's interesting. Anyways, just storytelling in general, I think, which you've always done, but before it was photography, and that's kind of how we knew each other. Can you tell me a little bit about photography, and that's kind of how you started out in the media and just visual journalism world?
Well, before I knew before we were friends, basically, I wasn't really into the whole journalism. I've always dreamed of it, looking at pictures and photographs of icons like Steve McCurry, for instance. You always want to be that guy or your best version in what he did. And I started in 2010, 10 years ago, with photography, and didn't really stop. Still today, I absolutely find still imaging much more interesting than video, because it's something that needs to convince with only one frame, especially with all the quantity that we have in today's environments with so many bazillion pictures on Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah.
To create something that people look at more than half a second is a big challenge. And I started really street photography when I was living or street/documentary photography when I was living in Jerusalem, where I met Christian and you. Because I was outside of a usual environment and outside of my things that I knew. And this developed ultimately through FS to, us traveling across the world and seeing some incredible scenes and being able to take pictures of absolutely crazy locations. And while we were doing that, I also started my big passion project, which was photography in motorsports in Europe, which, as a child, I always, when I learned about the 24 hours of Le Mans, I dreamed seeing these pictures of these Porsches with these, in the night doing pit stops and everything. I dreamed to just go there once in my life, and I now have been there for 3 years and have been helping an Aston Martin factory driver that I still work with today to tell his personal story of his journey during these races. And we'll continue to do so.
Has that industry been affected from COVID-19?
Oh, absolutely. So not only that we can't go racing and we don't get this little sports like, watching basketball on TV every weekend kind of thing as the audience, but these people, one of the team bosses that I interviewed on my second episode, he basically is the Lamborghini factory team also competing in the United States at IMSA. He had to lay off 100% of his staff.
Man.
Yeah, and that's Austria, one of the countries that have not been as devastated as, let's say, neighboring Italy or
Right.
other places. And he had to basically fire everyone with a guarantee that he could rehire his people once the business is up and running. But like airplanes lose money when they don't fly, race cars lose money when they don't race.
Yeah.
And, you know, like this whole sponsorship deals that are dependent on media exposure and everything. The financial commitment to do like a, let's say, Daytona race is per car $800,000.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to make that money back somehow, especially when you're unable to win the race, and when there's like 100 cars competing. You go figure what your chances are, you know. So the numbers game in motorsports and how they've been affected and these teams have been affected is a very fantastic illustration of what's happening to the American economy, to the German economy,
Right.
or any other economy, really, because what we took as guaranteed work, more or less, you know, when you could always find something to do if you really tried. Right now, even when you have a full-time job, my 9-to-5 is working in financial technologies. It's even if whatever you do is great, but people are currently busy with surviving, and no one really wants to look to the future more than 7 days from today, because that's too much of a risk to look further than that at the moment.
Yeah, I know Germany and Europe has been in doing isolation longer than the US has. And just a sense in the US is kind of feels like if they have to go through May through this, you know, people are going to lose their minds in this country.
Yeah.
So in Germany, has it been close to 2 months or just a month and a half or something like that?
So as the US, we are a federal republic or federal state with somewhat autonomous, states within that bigger thing. And every state had to decide when they do it's not really a lockdown. They call it social distancing measure, whatever. But you do get punished for up to 30 grand if you leave the house without any need, which is nothing in comparison to Italy, where you get charged for murder when you leave your house. But I don't know how long this will be going on, but as soon people really stop. I live next to a park at a lake, and I see people picnicking, hanging out, drinking, barbecuing all the time. And we will only get back to normality when these mentally limited people that just want to be dumb and they want to behave like a 5-year-old that got their candy taken away. Once they stop going out without need, then we all can go back to work and go back to what we love in our normal lives. And this hasn't happened yet.
I agree. It's just information overload. And I always think about if this virus happened, 15 years ago or before social media, I wonder what it'd be like. And so those are kind of things that I think about. And covering this virus now has become so complicated, even though it's so easy to post information, whether it's actually capturing it through video or interviewing people or connecting with people.
Yeah.
And then producing it and then having distribution instantly. It almost kind of hurts it now just because there's just so much information. And that was happening even before this virus happened. But now you really see it as COVID-19 continues to be the main topic of conversation, and rightfully so. It should be the main topic right now.
Yeah. And what's very interesting, I don't know how it is for you in your in Texas, in your environment. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of people, there was a lawyer in Germany that tried to sue the government for stealing her freedom, and she got so paranoid by everything that she ended up in an institution. Like just the quantity of stuff that it's, like you watch any of the big news outlets or local news, it's full of that. And it's, for many people, it's so hard to filter out what applies to me and what's, let's say it a little bit extreme, what's other people's problems, but not mine.
Yeah.
And then in the age of social media, I think we right now see in real time stuff that when we look at big historic events, and you're like, yeah, why didn't they do anything about that, or why didn't they stand up, or why didn't they totally follow these good instructions? Like, it's just, we see in real time what people think, what they want to communicate, and not always it is a good thing that everyone gets to speak with a platform about everything, because not everyone is qualified for, speaking publicly about health situations.
Yeah. I think when I got my updates on anything virus, I watched Joe Rogan. He had a few experts on, and that kind of gave me the knowledge of just kind of understanding how viruses work, and their thoughts and opinions of if it's old people or younger people, and even the experts who study diseases their majority of their career, they still don't really know what's going on. So my opinion, and I think a lot of people, is I'm listening to all sides, but having an understanding that we won't really know until probably in a year or so of the actual story. And I think that's been lost in content in general, is we don't have the patience. And that's hard to do, because something breaking news where you have people dying, that's hard to do. And you want to put out information as fast as you can. So it's an interesting time.
Absolutely. And I think one of the positive effects of us that are not physically affected by this, I realize I, structure my day more, because, every day would be the same. I spend more time with my family, making phone calls with them, and I'm also finally are able to do some hobbies. Like, I wasn't bored for a single day since all of this started. And, from the many downsides that everything has, I think in some way it also brings us back together and connect more deeply with each other. And
you live in the city, and you're like for me, I'm super lucky. I live like in the countryside. I have space. I can go in my backyard and connected to my backyard. I can even go out, and hike if I wanted to. And then, the only really thing and I've been working from home for my whole life. I have a home office. So I think for a lot of freelancers, we're used to this. We learned, how to manage our time when you can be distracted by a lot of different things if you're not at an office. But you live in a, big city, and I'm lucky that I have space to roam around in and work on things. But even for you, you live in a, Berlin, where you don't have as much room.
Yeah, and I got lucky in a unfortunate situation, because we live at the very border of the city. Like, after us, there's just a forest, and then there's nothing for a long time. But still here, since it's like somewhat a tourist attraction and people come here because it's so beautiful and everything, we decided we are just not leaving the house until we exactly know what this virus is and what it does to people, or until we know that, we developed somewhat immunity to it. I think it's everyone needs to decide for themselves, obviously,
Right.
ultimately. But I think it's a little bit playing Russian roulette with going out and following your daily routines, eating, even getting drive-through at McDonald's or whatever, stuff that was so normal just a few weeks ago. Right now we're saying nope.
Yeah.
And I think for us that's the right decision, and we have a really good peace about it for sure. Even if we are in a big city, but we live outside, but we still don't leave because 5,000 people in the city alone are tested positive. And just looking at the statistics, I do not think it's a good idea to leave the house when you don't need to.
No, for sure. It's just the unknown. But yeah, I just kind of transitioning. I remember, can you kind of remember when we first met? I just remember I borrowed your leather jacket at a bar.
Yeah. I still have that picture though.
Oh yeah, same. Yeah.
It was really a magical moment, if you want to name it that, because as I told you earlier, I always want to do something meaningful with my art or my hobby or however we're gonna call this. And I already got more routine and more access to this through being in Jerusalem and having the opportunity to be in a new environment, which is always inspiring. And then I met Christian in the media school that we both went to for a short time, and besides telling me that I should not waste my time at media school, he also told me about this Texan guy that he knew, and that you went to Iraq and you did all of this absolutely crazy stuff. I think that was the time when the Vicar of Baghdad was released on Vice.
Yeah, it was probably around that time. Yeah, and we did some stuff during the Gaza conflict in 2012. And Christian and I kind of had some mutual friends there. And then I think that when I met you was my second or third time to Israel and Palestine. And yeah, man, I miss Jerusalem. It would be hard for me to live there, but Jerusalem and Israel it's a very interesting place, and I appreciate it. What was it like for you to live there?
Totally different. So I'm from a small town, where I'm from, we would say village to that, from a small village in the mountains of South Germany, a little bit south of Stuttgart. And, life is very calm, very slow, which at that time I hated, like you're growing up, you want to conquer the world and everything. And then moving to Israel to volunteer in a kibbutz and, like to get more sunshine and, get a different lifestyle over there was a very impactful thing for me in my life, because I think what's the most special thing about that place is that it's influenced by, like Ashkenazi, by Arabics, by, all of these different cultures and people and tribes, so to speak. And if you turn off the news and if you don't listen to people that just talk to hear themselves speaking about something, you actually get to adore this place because it's so multicultural. The food in there is probably one of the best quality foods you can get in the whole world, because you get a little bit of everything. You get Asian, African, European influences. And because life can end so quick, I think, people over there appreciate it more, and not like in Germany. We always like to see the negative, or not always, but many times we like to see the negative in things because we live so well that we forgot how well we have. So we get held up with small things. Obviously it doesn't apply to everyone, but just like to make an example, I found for myself a much more lively environment and a bigger blend of cultures. And the where are you from is not asked out of fear or out of, oh, I don't know who you are, I only know people with my same skin color where I'm from. It's more about celebrating basically the
Right.
diverse elements of that.
And look, when I went, there's definitely parts of Israel where it's very difficult to understand. It's one of those places where you have to go visit yourself, and you're going and know the right people to take you around, because otherwise you can travel there, and especially if you go on these type of groups, tourism, anything like that, it's really hard for you to see the real. And that's like with any country.
Yeah,
I think
I can. Sorry to cut you off.
No,
there.
go
I
ahead.
can give you a perfect example of that. My wife and I went to our honeymoon to Egypt because we are history geeks, and I think all of the Egyptian temples and stuff that they built is super interesting. But we were part of a tourist group because we didn't really wanted to do logistics on a honeymoon.
Right. We did the same.
Yeah, we just rushed through the places, and we never got the time to breathe and, get a sense for the sense for the location and the feeling for the vibe there, because you always have to rush in and out. And I bet the same when you go to Israel with a big tourist group and you don't have time for yourself to explore, or you don't know anyone local that can take you to a cool burger place or whatever, you might like. But it takes time. You got to be there for a while to really see it and understand it.
That is true. If my parents went, like, I would be able to link them up with good people, and they don't have to do so. But Israel, there is a lot of good groups they could do it. If they're just staying for a week, I totally get it. But you're not going to understand the real of the country, the Palestinian side. And so it is one of the most multicultural places. Like, even on Jaffa Street in Jerusalem, I was sitting with Israelis, Americans, Jordanians, and Palestinians. Now, not all Palestinians can go across. There is a real, there's a real, I don't want to say division, because there is a lot of meaning between that. But it is a very complicated country where it's difficult to explain. And we've both covered, between the Palestinians and the Israelis. And it's one of those places, yes, a photograph and video can help explain it, but it's almost better to, okay, here's some stories, but maybe when you have some time, it's actually possible to go to those countries and actually see it for yourself. Israel is very different in that way, where it's Tel Aviv and Jerusalem are very, very safe, and you can go there and really educate yourself on, you're not going to be able to go to Gaza. Gaza is a whole different type of place.
Yeah, but you also don't go to Detroit at night when you don't have to.
Exactly. Yeah.
Certain things you probably want to avoid, even in your own home country. Like, there are certain areas where you just don't want to go. And
I feel for the Palestinian youth, like, especially, the low income families who just have to get permission for everything. And they grow up with a wall in front of them, even though the wall has decreased a lot of security issues. And so I don't think a lot of people understand that, but there's also some side effects of just a wall being in front of you. And so do you remember covering protest of the youth, Palestinian youth and the IDF?
Yeah. We were there with one of our good friends, one of the locals. And what is interesting to see is that a lot of these riots, at least to my perspective, seem very orchestrated, very routined, in a way. Like, some nice Friday afternoon activity of some sort. And I don't believe that anything what happens like that really helps the people there. You know, like if you want to be a state, you got to deal with borders. Easy as that. But yeah, I think everyone that is affected by any sort of conflict, like also on the Israeli side, you know, there's this constant threat of people that are like you, but they all have been told a certain narrative, and you know, people are willing to commit violent crimes against you, and you always gotta think about that when you walk, you know, across the city, when you do your military service in your uniform. And I mean, we are currently being a little bit skeptical going outside, and that's just, you know, like a virus. But you know, I think both sides are equally affected on this, and ultimately, people need to stop following the politics and just try to connect on a human level to resolve all of that.
Yeah,
I think there's no other way around it, because people are very much alike, no matter where you're from. But as soon you stop listening to extreme opinions, let it be on social media, or let it be in our families or in the public, only then it is really possible to
right.
figure out that situations like that make it worse for everyone involved and not better.
Yeah, I remember covering riots, especially in Hebron, which is an area in Palestine, the West Bank, and they have some crazy riots. And it's a very complex area because there are settlements, but you know, the Israelis are not settlements. You know, these people have been here for a long time.
Yeah.
But just to explain, you know, there's a Palestinian kind of city, and there are people, Jewish people living pretty much in the mix of it, and there's always tensions there. Not all the time, but if something political or something happened, then that place can just erupt to some of the biggest riots I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean,
like insane
just
amount.
Need to laugh a little bit, because thinking about it, it really feels more like football sports hooligans going after each other. You've covered actual wars, you know, you have been at the front lines in the trenches.
And I've gone on both sides. Like on one riot, I would go right behind the IDF, and then I would go back to the Palestinian youth and go back and forth. And, you know, I learned, at that time I was very young. And so it was very exciting. And you would hear tear gas, or not hear, you would get hit by tear gas and rubber bullets. Christian got hit with a rubber bullet on the side. And sometimes they'll shoot live fire. That's when, you know, it gets really serious. So it starts out as playing, but when you have that many situations and tensions, and it just keeps going, and you let it keep going and going, it can escalate very quickly. And so it's a country I would like to go back and see some old friends, and but it's one of those places. Yeah, it's great. We take videos and we've done stories there before, but it is such a complex country. I think actually one of the best ones was Conan O'Brien went to Israel and
Team
the
Coco.
West Bank. Yeah, and he did an amazing video and used comedy, just like Bourdain used food. He used comedy to tell a story of both sides, and it's great. I love it.
What was for you your most memorable moment doing projects for FS? Not only talking about Israel, but also talking about everything else. What is the defining moment of when you realize that's why it's important that I do this?
Yeah, I think when I was younger, obviously being published with Vice was a big milestone. Having doing a full documentary with him was great. Me and Christian flying to Baghdad, and we did a documentary about this Anglican priest, Canon Andrew White, and being able to do a full documentary and post it and publish it was amazing. And we literally thought like, okay, this is it. Everything's just going to happen. And you, but in the end, you still have to work hard for it.
Yeah.
So I would say now the business side of just the industry has really taken the joy of just creating something now.
Yeah.
And war journalism and conflict journalism is not something, it has to be your passion, but it's not worth the risk of just going there just to take a selfie or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
it's the real world. It's not Instagram.
Yeah, exactly.
There's much worse that could happen to you than a sarcastic comment.
Mm-hmm. And it's a tough industry. You got to keep going. You got to work hard.
Yeah.
And I made mistakes. I learned a lot. And I think some of the most exciting times for me has definitely been Iraq. It's that country I've probably gone to more than any other country over the 40 countries that I've been to. And I kept going, even in college, I was going there. And it's a place that, I continued to go to, and have a lot of friends there. And it's such a complex country too, to understand. So, and I was able to bring you, in 2016.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Flying a drone in Iraq.
We didn't even get to fly it. Yeah.
I remember us trying to buy a drone like last minute before the flight, and we finally got it, and it was already a month's work. And then it basically got taken by the Iraqi TSA.
Yeah, it was in Erbil. It was like they had you couldn't find it anywhere on the website about bringing in drones, but yeah, they probably still have it and use it for who knows what, probably just for fun. So
yeah, and it was definitely to see the scale of what was going on and to see the real life impact. I remember when we were at this outpost behind the Kurdish lines, and we went with the Iraqi military, and they barely wore any uniforms. It's basically just camouflage stuff from H&M or something like that.
Yeah, there were Iraqi this area was outside of Kurdish areas.
Yeah,
it was technically on Iraqi government area, and it was probably an hour from Mosul. It was definitely like,
I think we could even see it in the horizon.
Yeah, you could. Mosul's
Mosul's
such a big city. And yeah, there were Iraqi military there, but there was also a lot of Shia militias, PMF type people there. And yeah, you would see, truckloads of IDPs, displaced people coming from Mosul to that area.
Yeah.
You remember that?
And it wouldn't stop.
Oh yeah.
It constantly was a stream of people. Like, we went to this, I think it was a school or something.
It was like a daycare school kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we went in there, and there were already thousands of people there. A lot of young children not having anything, no toys, no proper clothes, only what they basically had on themselves. The mothers trying to care for them. There were barely any, if not none, men there.
Yeah,
I don't think there
I
were
think they
a lot of them.
separated. They
Yeah,
separated the men, I believe, and they were in another location,
yeah,
and because it was people were just coming there truckloads, so they still had to, you know,
maintain some order, some.
order, but also
Yeah,
security check people,
yeah,
which I don't even know how they did because most people don't have any ID there leaving, and they have like a cell phone.
yeah,
So yeah, it was pretty chaotic time, and at that time it was like August, I want to say, and it was
yeah,
blistering 110 to 120 degree heat,
yeah,
and filming at those refuge or IDP camps.
yeah.
Oh, I don't even know how they did that. It was
Yeah,
brutal.
and the aircon was broken in our truck, so that didn't help. I remember Christian and me sitting in the back. I was like, yeah, we wish we were dead. This is too much.
I was somewhat used to it because I am from Texas, but even then, it just burns down on you,
Yeah.
and your equipment gets hot, and
Yeah, or like I was flying that drone over that camp and suddenly the iPad died and I couldn't see the drone anymore and I basically had to fly it blind, just guessing where I was going and somewhat the drone returned, which I have no idea how that worked, but somehow it did.
oh yeah,
It's- it brought us to our limit in a physical sense and brought our gear to the limit and somehow we made it through that, which was a big moment in my personal life and definitely gave me another perspective on life as well being there.
yeah. I've been working on because I was shooting mostly virtual reality 360 video,
Yeah,
and so I'm finally getting close to because I filmed for almost like a year and a half just in 360. So eventually I'm going to release it. I think probably in the summer is probably when I'll do that. And probably not do film festivals. Like I've done the film festival route.
yeah,
I've published with other news companies. So I think I'm just going to release it myself. And that's kind of where I think the journalism industry, you're going to see a lot more independent people publishing their own content instead of
yeah,
publishing through traditional news.
yeah.
That's kind of where I see it. I don't know. What do you think?
I think we're definitely moving to personal brands versus corporate brands that we get our content from because fill in big newspaper name here. If it's a certain journalist that you don't find as, let's say, trustworthy or if it's even interesting at the bare minimum, then you're just not gonna read that big newspaper as much anymore. And you're more tending to listen to individuals that, I don't know, let it be YouTubers, let it be people with their own blogs. And I think YouTube and blogging has grown up by now. It's very interesting on the Joe Rogan's show. They were like, yeah, what is mainstream media and isn't YouTube sort of mainstream media if a video gets 10 times the reach what
Right.
TV stations are getting?
I know.
I found this really interesting. And the word legacy media is, I think, a wonderful way to describe how what's happening right now, that independents are making more impact and in some ways also more money from what they do because they have a personal brand.
Exactly.
Like let's use Vice for example. There's this guy Tim Pool and
He's
he
crushing
definitely he's crushing it in what he does, and independent from how you think of what he makes, but he certainly can live from that.
Hey, I'm gonna pause you real quick. My dog
Yeah.
wants to get out. Hold on.
Yeah, I see that.
It's a sponsor break. Hold on, guys. I'm gonna let my dog out of my office. Go ahead. All right. That was our sponsor, Mumford, my dog. So
Mumford Designs.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's why I think I agree completely when it comes to, and right now most of the independent content are bloggers or Joe Rogan, but you're going to see more people like Tim Pool who are journalist background start doing more like him.
Yeah, and I also like in my hobby world, there is a company out of LA, Donut Media, which, like when people like me, we used to watch Top Gear, we used to watch,
Oh yeah.
These kinds of BBC, whatever. And right now we are at the point where just a bunch of people can say, hey, let's do a YouTube channel. And they get millions of subscribers already in such a short time. And now they're one of the main news sources for enthusiasts about that. And, for many people, all of these beauty bloggers, they don't buy Vogue anymore or any of that stuff. They just follow people that tell their own stories. Or when you look at gaming, you don't really read gaming magazines anymore. You watch PewDiePie and you're up to date with with what's funny or not, or what's currently a trend in the thing. Or it's just so much more diverse. That's basically what I'm trying to say.
Sure,
everyone finds their niche.
I'm sure people like Joe Rogan who've been doing, I bet they've been offered so much money to do a network, to move their show, but that's just, and I'm sure he was hit up for that for a long time ago, and his podcast is probably worth way more. He gets to do what he wants to do.
Yeah.
He can say whatever he wants.
Yeah.
And he owns the rights to it. And he played the long game, not the short game.
Exactly. And you need not only the commitment to do whatever you do in the long game, like, podcasting is one of these things that are exciting for 3 or 4 episodes. And then you really realize it's work.
Yeah,
it's
no,
something
it is.
that you need to keep doing on a regular basis. And it's definitely for creatives, keep the control over your content. If you can afford it, stay independent, or if you have some sort of employment, still have an independent project as a second, maybe not exit strategy, but as a second path to what makes you happy, that you can operate by your own rules and, do what you're passionate about. Because I went through the same stuff as you said, like the business side took the fun out of the job for me.
Mm-hmm.
And right now my livelihood is purely business, nothing creative. But then my creativity, after years of not having the urge to do anything creative anymore because I felt so burnt out from it. You grow more and you can become better because you care and you volunteer to do it, versus basically having to show up 9 to 5 in an office in an agency or a broadcasting network and just have to follow instructions, which for some people works, but I think for a lot of creatives it doesn't.
No, I would, like, even 5 years ago or even 2 years ago, I would tell people, getting published, writing a short, pitch to an editor and everything. Yeah. Now I tell people, continue to pitch, get published. That's one thing you have to have on your portfolio, and you want to try to, make money. And so, but that doesn't stop you for creating your own content now. And that's the long game. Because I think it's just going to get harder and harder to do this kind of stuff. Who knows? What if YouTube starts charging people,
Yeah.
What if the internet, just becomes commoditized and doing this kind of stuff becomes kind of broadcast, regulated, where you can't say everything. So now's your chance.
I mean, we're already somewhat there, but I think right now there's enough dynamic to push back on that.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can
adjust to
pay your bills from thoughts and prayers. Like, you need to make money out of it, but I think that's why I said, YouTube has grown up is because they figured out a way to monetize that. The
Right.
creators, not only by YouTube ad money, but also having this episode is sponsored by fill in sponsor name here, to really, for them to be able to keep doing what they're doing and, not having only, to rely on one way to make money like you do when you take a corporate job, which I'm not trying to say it's bad. I work at a big corporation myself, but you can't be romantic about business life, and you are romantic about what you do creative.
Right. No, 100%. I'm kind of working on a short documentary project, because the Nepal earthquake anniversary, when it hit, is coming up end of April.
Really?
Yeah, it'll be 5 years. April 25th, I believe, is when the earthquake hit. And I still have so much footage that I never used. And I think that's what I'm kind of working on. Because I still want to do YouTube videos that are more, documentary film style. Not really how-to videos, but more...
Because documentary stuff is timeless. What happened in the past will still be relevant in the future, versus how to, like, if someone told, is specialized on how-to stuff, it's a faster business model or a faster content strategy. You're basically reacting on what's out there right now, but history is as relevant in 10 years as relevant as it is today. But in 10 years, you have the chance to look at it back with some distance to it.
Exactly. That's why if I am going to make short videos or anything like that, it would be like video podcast. Because, the short game is doing these how to do 5 camera hacks, and, and the other one is tech reviews is big, but tech is going to change in a year.
Yeah.
And so I really want to make videos that are timeless, like you say. And if I do 8 videos in a year, that's great. That's plenty if each one that I really care about and put time into it. But yeah, Nepal was the Nepal earthquake was something we both covered. I was there pretty much right after it hit. And you were there right after I left, covering a lot of the aftermath of it.
Yeah.
It's still today one of probably the biggest things just timeline wise for me. It was such a crazy, chaotic time. Natural disasters, one of the first natural disaster projects that or not projects, but
and the scale was insane.
Right.
Like,
it felt like the whole world was watching, and
it brought the whole country back to the Stone Age, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And to think about, how I arrived, I think 2 weeks after it happened. You basically went there almost while it was happening. Like, it wasn't much time from the first earthquake, big shake, to you landing there.
Right. Correct.
So what I saw probably is way less dramatic of what you did, because when you were there, the situation still was developing faster than 2 weeks later, where things already have a little bit came back to some kind of order. And I remember Craig Miller and I driving through with a little Jeep, basically Indian version of a Jeep, driving through these villages in the Himalayas. And some of the locals told me, that used to be my village, and there's still like somewhat of 2,000 people buried under these stones.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really spooky in a way, because there was life. The city has had roads, children still are playing there or playing there again, but their parents or grandparents are still buried under these stones, and they had no means of getting them out of there. And I think that was, besides this beautiful kind spirits of the Nepalese people, was for me the biggest and most shocking experience there.
Yeah, it was on our flight heading to Kathmandu. It was majority of the passengers were all first responders, aid organizations from France or Canada. I mean, everyone was coming.
Yeah, it's
And
NGO Woodstock.
oh my gosh, it was madness. And yeah, Christian and I talked about it in one of the podcasts. I actually checked in the bag, and I can't believe I did that because so many people were not getting their bags, and you would just see in the terminal just bags piling up. And I didn't even have to check in the bag. I just checked in a bag that had my clothes. It was none of my gear, but I got so lucky that my bag came up, and I was so worried I wasn't going to have it. So that's a good thing to know. When a natural disaster hits hard and you're going, try to not pack a bag or check in a bag.
At least get your expensive stuff in your carry-on.
Yeah,
everything. That's basically what I still do until today. Like, I get the things that I need, I get in the carry-on, and the stuff that I have not as much of a problem with losing goes into the checked bag.
Exactly. No, it was a country when that was happening. It was information was really hard to figure out. I think most people thought there was destruction in Kathmandu, mainly in the old part of the city, but most of the real bad destruction were out in the villages. Really hard places to get to. In some places where you have to use helicopters or all-terrain vehicles, and then you have to wait for certain roads to clear because of landslides. But yeah, just taking these photos and taking these videos of these people's lives were completely normal. And then Mother Nature just boom, and earthquake was, I don't know how long the earthquake was. I think it was in the minutes. Then all of a sudden their life has changed forever. And I remember back in Kathmandu, they were doing cremation. And I just remember them burning hundreds and hundreds of bodies all throughout the day and into the night. It was, having what seemed like 60 fires at one time, burning nonstop. And it was, unless you didn't have the right local people, you were just going to be stuck in Kathmandu. And you would see tons.
No way out.
Yeah, you're not going to do anything. And fuel was hard to get to. There weren't that many vehicles, so we were lucky enough to partner with someone like Craig, who's not with us right now, anymore. And he had an NGO, which is still going on, called Thirst No More. And Craig had all the right local connections, partners, and did some amazing work. What was it like for you to spend time with Craig and taking some photos and video for him?
Absolutely amazing. He was definitely a dream to work with. Like everyone, especially when you do work that makes you sleep deprived and hungry for the most of the time. Everyone gets grouchy for a little bit at some time, but besides that, it was, this dude knew what's up. He could make very effective on a small scale help the locals to help themselves. And that's super rare in what I've seen of NGOs around the world, no matter if it was Iraq, the Balkan crisis, Nepal or Tanzania or everything like that. A lot of NGOs, they come, they do their little circus, and then they go away and, applaud themselves how awesome they are. But Craig always did connect with local people that already have taken responsibility, and he just enabled them to help their own people on a sustainable, long-term way. And yes, we were there also to document what they were doing, which is super important because people that give their money, they need to know that it's arriving in the right spots. And a lot of NGOs are flying places like, to have a little Woodstock thing going on. Oh, yeah, we're going together to that place and we're doing our thing. And there was one NGO that instead of bringing food or medical or hygiene or basic survival kits, they just were buying Bibles. It's like, yeah, they need Jesus more than food.
And it was mainly because they didn't know how to get the supplies. It wasn't because they purposely did it. It was because, we don't have the resources to get supplies right now. They probably eventually did, but at that time they had to go do something.
Yeah, which still is, don't get me wrong, it's still a waste of money because maybe you can't get 50 tons of rice, but you sure can for the same money get a few box of protein power bars from one of the camping backpacker shops that were still operating. And like if you really tried or if you wanted, you don't need to go to camps that are run by other organizations and take credit for it.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing is, even in Iraq, they would take photos at these IDP camps. They're gigantic camps. Some of them have probably close to 40 to 50,000 people. And they're posting photos saying, yeah, we're helping people from Mosul fleeing. I was like, okay, these people have fled Mosul like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yes, you're technically right, but you're also wrong. And this is a UN camp. And you really do see during natural disasters in Nepal, you really do see if you're not prepared, you're not going to do anything. And so, and you're just vulnerable.
Better stay home and give the money to someone that knows what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And, I was able to go back to do a VR film of like 1 year later after the earthquake, and it was still in the rebuilding phases, especially in the remote villages, and a lot of the schools were completely destroyed still, and makeshift schools, under a tent kind of thing, very little surprise. But now it's being 5 years coming up. That's just crazy. It doesn't feel that long. I'm curious how the country is doing. So maybe this year we'll take a trip and do something like that.
If we can travel again this year, who knows?
I know.
Maybe we just put on the VR goggles and watch the 360 shots that you made there. That is still one of my favorite documentaries in general.
Yeah, that was like one of that was still when you had to use 6 GoPro cameras and manually stitch it together, and it was a nightmare.
Ain't much, but it's honest work.
Exactly. Simon, thanks for coming on. I think we're gonna have you come on every once in a while, and
sure.
I need to do your podcast at some point too.
Yeah.
How do people find you? Where some links, or how do people find your podcast?
Basically just go to stayinathome.com, which writes exactly as the Bee Gees song "Staying Alive," but just at home.
Nice.
And that was the inspiration for the title. And I have all episodes linked there. I try to publish every Saturday if I'm able to, and if the recording doesn't get messed up. And if anyone knows someone that would be interesting to talk to, also send them always my way, because there's only so much I can do from here. And Dylan, it was a big pleasure to be on here and go back in time, how our friendship and our work together has started, and to literally now look back of almost a decade of collaboration between continents. There's definitely nothing not much in my life that I've done with my work that I'm so proud of than the projects I did with you and Christian, for sure. And I hope once all of this Kung Flu stuff is over, we are getting out on the road again and, do what we like the most. And I'm very excited to see you soon.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's right now is, I try to see the light in things, and I think at this time it forces us to be creative, think about things. I've been thinking about my career and things that I want to do, and doing more stuff like this. I think that's one of the positive things, at least for me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So Simon, thanks, man, and appreciate coming on, and we'll talk soon.
Will do. Take care.